So welcome everyone. While you are all joining us on Design Open. Welcome to Design Open, and while we are waiting a few seconds for the participants to join in, you can use the chat box and type in the name of the city you're in. That will give us an idea of where people are zooming in from. So here we are. Welcome to Design Open, session 2 of this year 2022. So we'll have 4 speakers as a format, and I'll come back on that later with Sonia Manchanda. So my name is Alok Nande. I'm based in Brussels, and Sonia Manchanda, based in Bangalore, will be your host for this session, and we have 4 speakers zooming in from different parts of the world. What is Design Open? In few words, Design Open was born in 2015 next to an event called India Design Mark Showcase, and then it went through different lives. It first was taking place in real life at Design Bound in Bangalore. And then due to COVID, we had to kind of reinvent the format, and we went online. But the essence of Design Open is opening up conversations to try to identify weak signals, to try to decode what is emerging, to try to connect the dots. And we had a number of conversations in different cities and different places. 10 editions, 5 cities, 20 plus workshops. We had more than 70 speakers, and this time we are coming with a format in 22 with 4 sessions, and each session has got 4 speakers, and Sonia will tell more about that. The idea is to explore topics, themes, and try to understand what is happening. It's by looking at what is that we could try to envision what could be, what can. And the website Design Open gives you access to archives. In 2020, we explored a series called Design Open Happy. In 21, we were busy with another series in French called Vivre. And the idea here was also to approach different cultures, different sensitivities, and try to understand the tensions between our practice, the tensions between what is happening in India with the world. And we'll spend 44 minutes now with our speakers, and I'll give the floor now to Sonia Manchanda, who's the founder of Spread, and Spread is powering up this series on Design Open. Sonia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alok, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I want to give you a quick insight and introduction to our speakers. We have Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. He is IT Secretary Government of Telangana, and he's joining us from Hyderabad, having just set up the world's largest innovation campus to create a culture of entrepreneurship, to sort of make the next happen, to address the most compelling problems of the people. And besides that, he's armed with several prestigious scholarships. He has done many interesting and big consulting assignments globally. He's also part of a League of Learners and Leadership created by the Government of India. We are glad, sir, that our government has pathbreakers like you, and it's a complete privilege to have you here with us. I'm going to introduce all the speakers, and then Alok is going to introduce the trigger of today. And then we're going to leave the floor to you. Our next speaker is Anne Stenros. She's joining us from Helsinki, Finland. She's the former Chief Design Officer of Helsinki, and the only Chief Design Officer ever in the world of a city. She's also been the design director at Cone Corporation, and she has fond memories of India from her time there. She's also visiting lecturer at Nagaoka University of Technology in Japan. She's an author, she's a speaker, she's a consultant, and a very, very generous collaborator, co-creator. Currently, she's really interested in the idea of creative leadership and nature smart cities. And I'm sure there are incredible insights from your vast experience that we'll get today. We are really, really fortunate to have a creative stalwart like you so generously join us today. Thank you, ma'am. And we have also Vish Sahasranamam. I just know you as Vish. Actually, I find your last name very difficult to pronounce. Vish is joining us from Coimbatore, India. He's co-founder at Forge, a completely benchmark industrial incubator that everyone must visit. He spent, I think, 8 years globally. He spent time in USA, 7 years. USA, in Canada, in Israel, in China, in Sweden, that's right. To then come back to do the really tough work that somebody's got to do, right? Creating a culture of entrepreneurship, driving industrial innovation in the state of Tamil Nadu. So Vish, I know from personal experience, is a force of change, and it's amazing that you took time out, and we know your insights are literally from the ground, from having rolled your sleeves up. So we can't wait to get those insights from you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And we have Samara, Tanaka, a dear friend. She's joining us from rural Paranas, Brazil. So we are all over the world today. She is a creative strategist and a design researcher working independently. She has been an academician, a writer. She's co-author of the book Gamification Inc., where they've looked at how gamification can be applied to social transformation and also the transformation and recreation of organizations. She's currently part of a network which is known as Mecha-Read, right? Mecha-Read, is that how you say it? And where the whole idea is to exchange social innovation technologies and to come together to make change happen. So she's
currently, sorry, now it's called E2 Glax.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So she's a curious change maker, and her insights should really add something interesting to the mix. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge our partners who have really just understood the need in this time to make something like this happen, where we all connect online from wherever we are in the world, and just gone ahead and partnered with us to do so. So I'd like to acknowledge the Atlas, Atlas SkillTech University. They are India's first multidisciplinary New Age university, which is forging a path to the future, the confluence of design, innovation, cultures, creativity, entrepreneurship, and technology and impact. We also have as our partners Atlas ISDI School of Design and Innovation, empowering the next generation of change makers, path breakers with design mindsets, competencies, and skills. We also have, all the way from Brazil, the Blue Management Institute, or BMI. They are a global reference on strategy, culture, and innovation for large organizations, and also in the soft skills space and people management, they're doing some stellar work. We also have as our partners Bossa.etc., a content tech company created at the convergence of entertainment, training, and communication. Seen some of the work they do, it's really beautiful work, and they're also based in Brazil. As our partners, we also have the government of Telangana, Ministries of Industry and Commerce, perhaps the most progressive and innovative department and state in India. So thank you all, and with this I'm going to hand over to Alok to introduce the trigger before we open up the floor for our speakers.
Thank you, Sonia. Just to remind the participants and all the speakers, the format is pretty simple and sharp. We have 4 speakers and each speaker has 4 minutes. And then we'll open up and get into interactions between speakers and the audience. So for the audience, do not hesitate to tap in the questions in the Q&A box, or then those questions will be curated depending on time. So as Sonia mentioned, there is a trigger because we have a short span of time, and the trigger for these conversations to each of our panelists is how might we drive creativity, design, innovation, culture, and entrepreneurship at scale in a VUCA world. So the key words here is the notion of scale. Scale is such a complex topic, and VUCA, because the planet is under fire. Volatile, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity are shaping the landscape in different modalities, which are unexpected. And so we'll have Jayesh, and then Anne, and then Vish, and then Samara sharing their insights, each of you in 4 minutes. And Jayesh, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nandi. Greetings to all the fellow panelists. Greetings to all the participants. Let me begin by complimenting Spread for putting together this event by bringing different kind of perspectives on this very important trigger, on this very important thought, and getting us all together. So as I was introduced, I work for the government here in India in a province which is called Hyderabad. This is a province in the south of India. And I look after the important sectors of information technology, industries, innovation, entrepreneurship, skilling. So in the 3.5 minutes that I have with me still, I would like to very quickly tell you about how the government has tried to promote a culture of entrepreneurship, a culture of innovation. How have we succeeded in creating an ecosystem where design-led innovations are promoted, what institutions have we created, and so on and so forth. See, typically when anyone makes this claim that the government has created it, people are very skeptic. First of all, they are not even sure that government should get into these kind of areas, these kind of domains. In fact, if you ask many of these young innovators and entrepreneurs on what kind of help the government should do to them, I won't be surprised if the answer is that if the government stays away from us, that is the best help they can do for us. But our experience in Hyderabad, in the province of Telangana, is very different. Ours is a new province. Many of you may not be aware of it, but in India, it is possible to form new provinces if there is a justification, if there is a demand. So Telangana is the youngest, Hyderabad is the youngest province of the country, has been created 8 years ago. And right from day one, we were very clear that innovation and entrepreneurship is going to be a big differentiator, which will aid the state in its progress, in its growth ambitions. So there are 3 things which I wanted to share with you. One is that while we can speak about innovation, entrepreneurship, etc., but are there people who are going to take responsibility for delivering this? So we have done something very unique in the country. We have created a series of institutions. For instance, as was pointed out, the country's largest incubator, which is called the T-Hub, has been developed by the government. And today it is spread over 350,000 people, can house 4,000 startups. And most of the startups who come there are people who have products and solutions which are potentially very useful for the society at large. So focus is on social impact, focus is on solving the pressing problems of the community, of the grassroots. We also have, and incidentally, I'm participating in this call from this institution that I'm going to speak about. This is called T-Works. This is the country's largest prototyping facility. This is spread over 110,000 square feet and has the latest state-of-the-art equipment and machinery which can help people in prototyping, in making something. We also have an institution called V-Hub, which promotes innovation and entrepreneurship amongst women. Now, all these institutions are great, but we also are conscious of the fact that it is government's responsibility to create a pipeline of potential users of these institutions. So we have started working with our schools, with our colleges, and ensuring that students from a very early stage understand what is problem solving, what is design thinking. So we run programs for all the schools in the province, which is called a School Innovation Challenge. And we identify bright teachers in all these schools and colleges to whom we give lots of design orientation. We conduct boot camps, and then we encourage them to spread that message amongst their students. And some very good ideas have come out, which we have supported further. Hyderabad is also a very important location in the country, in India, that is of research and development. There are more than 50 plus R&D labs, both promoted by the government and the private sector in diverse areas like, let us say, agriculture, life sciences, pure sciences, defense. In fact, 80% of countries' defense R&D happens in Hyderabad. But what we had experienced in the past is that these institutions, first of all, they don't speak to each other. They work purely in silos, and they are not very responsive to the needs of a younger innovator, to the needs of the industry. So all that has been changed. We have created an institution called RICH, the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, which brings all these institutions together. And they have been made much more responsive to opening their doors to industries, to SMBs, to startups, to young students, and so on and so forth. So I'm very confident, while I told earlier that the standard skepticism that government should stay away, government has no role into all this. I am, on the contrary, very confident that looking at our experience in Hyderabad, in Telangana, I feel that government has a very strategic role to play. If you provide that enabling kind of ecosystem, if you bring the best talent from the open market to run these institutions, to provide that facilitation, and your responsibility is one of providing support wherever needed. You don't do micromanagement, you don't do over-regulation. These are some of the historical reasons why people feel that government should stay away. But if you understand where your boundaries end, where professionals should take over, you can really create magic. And I'm very proud to share this with you, that in 8 years, we have become the national role model in the country on how a very comprehensive, design-focused innovation ecosystem can be put together so meticulously. So I'll be happy to share more details or answer any question or provide any clarification which you may have. But for the present, these are my opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for giving us a concrete illustration of what scale means. Having more than 4,000 startups and a complex ecosystem is a concrete example of scale. And allow me to pass the baton to Anne. Anne, you're in Helsinki. You have been traveling the entire planet, and you'll share with us some of your insights. And your audio seems off.
Your audio is off, Anne.
Oh, first and foremost, thank you, Sonia and Alec, for this invitation to this inspiring group of experts. And I think that I go fast to the topic because I have only 4 minutes and I have 4 points. I have learned it from a Finnish previous prime minister that usually you have only 3 points, but now I try to add 1 more to this 3. So when we are talking about future foresight, usually we are talking about what is the situation now, what is the now. Then we are looking for the transformation, and then what is after. So what is the after? And now we can already understand what is the after of pandemics, for example. But then future foresight tries to go even further to understand what is the next, meaning that the new normal or something like that. It's a long-term span from that transformation. So my point is here that if we really want to understand what is the next, we have to move from lifelong learning to unlearning and relearning plus microlearning. And this is something that people don't understand, that they still consider that if they have some kind of education or some kind of certificate or programs done, fine, but that must be ongoing. And you have to add there also the idea of unlearning. And I'm all the time, every single day, I try to unlearn and relearn something new. And it's a good day if I learn something new. But you have to have that constant flow going on in your mind to understand what could be the next. So my second point is that while I was the chief design officer of the city of Helsinki, and that was the first that kind of position in the whole world. So I noticed that there was a lot of discussion about smart city, right? As we all know, that was 2016, 2018 already. But now the smart city is not enough as a concept. We have moved from the idea of a smart city to a nature smart city. And that's how we scale this naturalistic intelligence that is one of the intelligence mode that we as humans can have, meaning that we have to reconnect ourselves with the nature in order to survive the future. And there are already quite interesting concepts or approaches emerging, like biophilic design, literally meaning that we are only one part of the nature, we human beings. Then there is a new idea about geodesign that is using all that data available in a certain microlocation, so that it becomes a kind of tool for designers to plan, for example, that area in the city or in the region. And I think this is something very, very interesting to tap in. Then there is a talk about a new term, green infrastructure versus the old gray infrastructure of pipes and roads and railroads. No, we are talking about green infrastructure, how we support the biodiversity and the trees in local areas. So a lot of good ideas and concepts are emerging on this area too, how to create a nature smart city. And the third point is related to that somehow. Recently, when I had been teaching this creative leadership to two Japanese universities, I have started to consider myself as a gardener. So we are moving from the idea of this, genius leader to idea of a gardener. And in my mind, creative leadership should be something like that, that you are enabling and helping others to thrive, and you are supporting rather than commanding. And this comes also when I read about Suzanne Simard's beautiful theory of the mother tree or a hub tree, how the big trees in the nature, how they are supporting the siblings, the small trees, how they are nurturing them, giving them water through underground networks of mycelium. So I think that there is so much that we can learn from the nature as such, or in an analogical way, that we really should start to consider ourselves as part of this surrounding nature and rebuild. First unlearn, then relearn and rebuild our human nature connection. And the last one, the fourth point is that, well, yes, we used to live VUCA world before the pandemics. Then they started during the pandemics, called it VUCA world with 2 C's, meaning volatile, uncertain, complex, chaotic, and ambitious. And now the last term that I recently learned is the BANI world, brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible. Meaning that this is completely different setup, because now it's how to make sense of a chaotic world, not only complex, but chaotic. So let's discuss about bunny world in the future. That was my input. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. So from our first intervention where design was seen as an institutional enabler, to you sharing with us design as, I would say, gardener, in a chaotic scene, we'll pass the floor to Vish, who will have to navigate with numerous concepts already on the table. Vish, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Now, scaling up innovation and entrepreneurship requires both demand side and supply side interventions. And I'm going to focus my talk on the high-tech sector where I have experience. So in the last 7 years in Forge, we've spearheaded initiatives to do both demand as well as supply side scaling. On the demand side, to scale innovation and entrepreneurship, the biggest opportunity, and in a country like India, the biggest opportunity has to be the public sectors, especially the core industrial sectors that are owned, regulated, and operated by the government of India. So national scale markets in defense, aerospace, oil and gas, infrastructure, transportation and logistics, urban sector are all huge opportunities to create the pull for innovators and entrepreneurs to come and solve these trillion-dollar sectors. So by bringing government to engage with tech startups, the entrepreneurs, as innovation and transformation partners, these public sectors can unlock efficiency, leading to the creation of these trillion-dollar markets for our startups right here in India. So in our role as the knowledge and capabilities partner, Forge has helped defense sector through the IDEX program and the urban sector through the CIX program to scale open innovation to the extent of creating and catalyzing thousands of startups. So in the next 5 years, we're hoping IDEX will reach a scale where we have at least 5,000 startups that have successfully engaged as partners with the Indian defense, and possibly we will have about 500 startups in the urban sector that have done the same with the in terms of scaling up the urban sector. Now on the supply side, the biggest opportunity again is in enabling and empowering the technical graduates to pursue innovation and technical entrepreneurship. So in a state like Tamil Nadu, which is where I come from and I live in, imagine hundreds of thousands of technical graduates that can go from being electrical, mechanical, computer, electronics, civil engineers to becoming innovation engineers. So in partnership with the government of Tamil Nadu, we are integrating an innovation practicum, a full-fledged 8-semester, 6-semester long intervention as adjunct to the engineering academic or the technical academic curriculum into government engineering and polytechnic colleges, wherein students develop technology skills and innovation competencies by working on transdisciplinary projects in multidisciplinary teams. So what they do, they build industrial grade solutions for real world problems that are posed, sponsored by the industry. Many of these student innovators and their project teams have graduated to becoming startups that are becoming technology or technical enterprises where they end up not just as job seekers or as employable job seekers, but actually job creators, wealth creators even. And many of them can potentially become attractive for venture funding too. So in a country like India, the Silicon Valley type of startups are going to be far and few between. But if we can look at, let's say, 1,000 startups who have the ability to put $1 million plus worth of economic value, then that's how we get to a $1 trillion scale in a country like India. So in a VUCA world, we have to overcome exponential scaling, almost planet-sized scaling risk factors. We've seen in the last 2 years a planet-size COVID pandemic. So we need to have national scale or at least regional, provincial scale initiatives, both on the demand side and supply side, to be able to counteract the forces of VUCA. And to add to it now, Anne spoke about BANI. So VUCA plus BANI needs a lot of national scale initiatives to counteract. So I would end it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Vish, for your insights. Before giving the floor to our last speaker, today we are July 28, and today we have consumed what the planet can offer to us. Today is a painful day for the planet, if I take a look from a planet point of view. And so I would challenge all of us and speakers and attendees to think about how to connect the dots and how to reintegrate nature components and dimensions into all those startups which are emerging at scale. And that would be my provocation, where I would like each of you to think about while Samara will share her 4 minutes insight. Samara, the floor is yours. You are zooming in from Brazil. Thanks for that, because it's early morning for you while India is enjoying their cup of chai.
Yes, thank you. Good morning to everyone. I think that was a good provocation you did, Alok, because for me, when we talk about VUCA, we're talking about the complex paradigm. It is another paradigm. So for that reason, I don't think we can keep using the same thinking of this modern paradigm that we had, that's all about control and certain ideas of scale that we had in the past. I don't think they fit at the moment. I think we have to think of scale in a different way. And because it is a new paradigm, it really demands new ways of thinking. And for that reason, I'm coming from a more grassroots perspective and experimentation. And in the past 10 years, I started to inquire a lot about how I could fit my design practice into what I was seeing in this complexity that I was seeing. And it didn't feel like the knowledge I had was enough to respond to what I was seeing, what was going on. So what I did at the moment, so 10 years ago, was to try to put myself into experience, to throw myself into experience, to leave the questions that I had. So I moved to a slum in Rio, and I lived there for 8 years. And basically I was there trying to understand how we could create things from within the community. And we experimented a lot with radically community-based co-creative practices. And of course, it was a long time there. There was a lot of learnings. But if there's one main thing that I can share with you from those times there, is that I learned how seminal and how important and underestimated relationships are in any process of creation and in any process of life, as a matter of fact, right? And when we're talking about complexity, it's all about relationships. And that insight became the basis of how I understand design right now. So whenever I want to start something, whenever I want to there's certain will to change something around me, instead of starting with an idea or with a project that I want to pursue, I start building relationships. I start getting to know people. And from those relationships, if the ground is fertile, if the conditions are right, the ideas, the projects, they emerge. They emerge out of the relationships. So that by itself, the idea that you are building these relationships, you're nourishing, you're gardening these relationships. And I really love I use a lot that metaphor because I love it. It's all about this bringing nature into our thinking. The complexity is how nature works. So once we bring that into our thinking, we are trying to garden these relationships and things will flourish. That's how plants grow, right? And that by itself is a way of making worlds. And I do understand design as a world-making activity. And this for me is a very whole way of thinking about design than what I used to think about the way I used to practice before. And it's not about control. It's not about setting deadlines. It's not about the end result. It's not about creating a product. It is about the process itself, this process of nurturing, of gardening, of giving nutrients to a soil that is fertile for things to emerge in a distributed, in a non-centralized way. And for me, that's how complexity and design, and they mesh in this huge rhizomic complex world.
Thanks, Samara. So rhizomic is one of the key words that we should keep here for the conversation. Rhizomic as a metaphor, rhizomic, which was pointed by the philosopher Deleuze and Guattari. And it's, I think, an important concept which connects nature and technology. And I'm curious to have some reactions from Jayesh and Vish on that. And then Anne.
So I with your oh, okay, I see another hand raised, so maybe I'll go next.
And go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to comment or support Samara when she was talking about these relationships, because it came to my mind that I read an article, an interview about one of the world-renowned Dutch gardeners who built the what is this High Line in New York, for example. And he said that the plants are like human beings. You have to know which one you put together so that they feel good together. So I fully support, Samara, what you said, that it's all about your gardening skills, how you make people feel and how you make them bloom. Because I asked in one of my classes, those business students to draw a flower, each of them. And they look, you know, they didn't like the idea. And I said, listen, everybody can draw a flower. So you don't pass my course if you don't draw a flower. And then finally, I got 30 plus beautiful flowers painted by hand or digitally. And I made a collage out of those. And immediately they understood when I showed that this is the diversity, this is the creative group that we are looking for. Everybody is blooming in a different way, but in a good relationship with each other. So thank you, Samara, for your insight.
Thanks, Anne. So Jayesh, you're next. What are the flowers you are going to draw for us?
See, when you introduced the trigger, Alok, you spoke about the multiple challenges, the crisis, but you also spoke about the opportunities and how you can reimagine a different world. So let me give you a very real example of the pandemic times. As one would imagine, the one of the biggest adverse impact during this lockdown period was on education, school education. School children were encouraged to do remote learning, basically learn from home or study from home. Now, in India, the phenomena of digital divide is already quite high, despite good intentions of the government to narrow it or bridge it. But the reality is that there are two Indias. There is one India which does not have device, lives in a place where there is no connectivity, and so on and so forth. And obviously, they are the people who require the biggest support from the government to really improve their living conditions, their quality of living, and so on and so forth. And we felt that potentially a whole generation of new learners can become absolutely adversely affected because of these new challenges which have been faced. But we also saw that this is an opportunity. So in India, in many of the provinces, including mine, I should admit, there's a big gulf between the perspectives of the teachers, their interests, their aspirations, and the perspectives of their learners, the children, the families that the learners come from. And it has been seen and believed that these two worlds, these two perspectives don't intersect at all. Teachers have their own interests, learners have their own interests, but we were able to use this as an opportunity, again, as you mentioned, to reimagine new opportunities, new possibilities. So what we did was that in a particular, so obviously the teachers are better paid. Most of them have access to a smartphone, and they do have some, even if they don't live in a particular location where there is very good connectivity, but they do have data packages, data plans, etc. So what we did was that we kind of threw this as a challenge to all the teachers, that your students are in a difficult situation. If you don't go out of the way to help them, tomorrow the burden to teach them will also become increased for you. I mean, you'll have to make double efforts to, first of all, bridge all these learning gaps and then bring them up to speed. So some very interesting solutions came out from the teachers, and these were implemented. So for example, in a cluster, teachers formed a WhatsApp group, and they would kind of create lessons. And then one of them who had the opportunity to print these, they would print. Some student volunteers will carry, and to all the children will do those exercises. The answers will be sent back to the teachers, and so on and so forth. So it is possible to think out of the box, bring all the stakeholders together. So when you mentioned that there are problems, it is a fact that there are problems, but the solutions are also available with someone. I guess the ingenuity, the skill is in finding who has the solution and connect them to the people who are facing problems. And as I said, willingness to explore new frontiers, willingness to create that enabling environment in which design-led interventions are brought to the fore. That is where a responsive government like ours has been functioning. So just wanted to share this live example to tell that, that while we are in a VUCA world, we are in a busy world, but there are also ways of overcoming some of these obstacles.
Thanks, Jayesh. We are approaching the end of the session, but Sonia, I think we'll take 2-3 minutes more.
Yeah,
and,
take up the questions. I think we've been able
yeah.
to zoom out and zoom in beautifully. And therefore, it's been really insightful. And we brought nature into the mix. So I think we already are in a very good place, but there are just 1 or 2 questions. Like there's a question around, and maybe Vish can take that. Can you give some insight on DICE design and implementation? Because I know you've had, like, you know, the protosem that you introduced, so many things you had to do to make that happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, Sonia, I was just sort of preparing for, you know, for an approach here, and the question is a good trigger. So we're talking about scale, and I think the nonlinear homogeneous scale is definitely not going to fly in a VUCA world, right? So what we need is heterogeneous scaling, where we need a system where there are pockets of scaling which happen, you know, on their own, maybe at a localized level. So, for instance, you know, today India is seeing enormous growth of the e-commerce online retail sector, but does it mean that we're going to have centralized production and distributed distribution and sort of localized you know, consumption, or are we going to go from, you know, or are we going to go into a world where there is localized production, localized distribution, localized consumption? Such a localized model obviously is you know, safeguarded from the volatile, the VUCA factors of a globalized you know, framework. So when we talk localization, I think that presents a huge opportunity for design, you know, creativity, and other forms of interventions. So if we want to sort of look at from a cultural standpoint, right? You know, the maker revolution, you know, has been going around for about maybe a couple of decades now. We're seeing massive democratization of enabling you know, technologies to realize local production, local manufacturing, local design. So how do we rethink engineering or technical education? Can we imagine you know, education engineers to be more artisans and craftsmen as opposed to, you know, very purely, you know, technocratic people, right? So that sort of opens up avenues where we sort of break through the silos of how traditionally you know, technical education is you know, is structured and delivered in India. Can we go into a more apprenticeship kind of a model, the whole, the front offer kind of models are all very interesting experiments, to take up, because the mass scaling of education is clearly not, paying us dividends. So how do we break scale? So we almost need anti-scale to scale against VUCA factors, right? So we got to rethink scale itself. I would leave it at that. Yeah.
Thanks, Vish. Allow me to connect some dots and building on the country where Samara is based. I was thinking about the theater maker, Augusto Boal, Theater of the Oppressed. And I would suggest all the engineering students to read texts by Augusto Boal, because number of you, be Samara, being Vish, you're talking about mindset. And here at Design Open, one of the challenge we saw is that in order to open up, we need to work on mindset. And it was fascinating to see that all four of you have touched upon this notion of mindset through your lenses. And yes, we need to re-question how do we see scale. And thanks each of you for pointing out this question. The frustration we have is that 44 minutes or 44 plus is not enough, because we could spend 40 minutes with each of you and spend a day. And one of the challenge we were exploring with Sonia is that we should have a Design Open Day at the Design Barn and bring all of you. I see that some other people are there from Brazil, like Daniel and some of his colleagues. Daniel was a speaker in the previous Design Open
and we have Hyderabad.
session.
We have Hyderabad too.
Yeah, and so yes, we have Hyderabad, we have Forge in Coimbatore, we have Design Barn in Bangalore. So we should find a kind of learning expedition with all of you. This being said, I would like first to thank all the speakers and give the floor to Sonia.
No, I'm just asking if we can take up the two questions that are here from Amrita and Shan very quickly. If everybody has time, do our speakers have time?
So Shan is talking about the notion of serendipity and asking Anne and Samara to react on that notion of serendipity. Anne.
I can answer on my behalf, because that's a good question, and maybe Samara, you can add on after me. But what I want to point out here is that actually creatives, they can bring this serendipity into organization. And that is exactly the most powerful thing of creativity within this kind of organization with a huge scale like the city. And an example of this was when I joined the city of Helsinki, and there was this traditional strategy planning process going on. And I said that, listen, is that a little bit old-fashioned? Maybe we can do a parallel scenario process to support that. And they said, because they didn't know what I'm going to do, that fine, okay, you can do your journey and we do our own on our way. And we created 4 scenarios, 4 personas, 1 to each scenario. And we ran workshops with 250 top city directors. And they said that this was the first time ever they had this kind of value discussion while doing this new strategy for the next 5 years. And I thought, oh my gosh, this was completely new for them to look the future through scenarios and personas, to empathize with them. And the discussions, they were extraordinary. And I learned a lot. But that is how you put the seeds into the garden that is a huge, like a city. You have to do it step by step. That's my understanding. Thank you.
Thanks, Samara.
Yeah, I think I love that concept. And for me, it's something that is very ingrained also in my practice. And I think it really demands an eye for that, because serendipity and all these encounters, they happen all the time. And sometimes we don't pay attention to them, or we don't think they are meaningful enough. So I think once you are in this mindset of, yes, this is part of the process. This is seems almost magical, right? These connections happen. And I think this eye for for these encounters, they are quite they needed for you to see them. And so for me in the practice, it's something that I'm always looking for. I'm always trying to keep an eye, and it is part also of nature complexity. And there's one concept that I think it's in a way analog to that from Carl Jung. He talks about meaningful coincidences. So sometimes we think, wow, there are so many coincidences happening, these encounters happening, but it has to do with what you're looking at, how you're looking at things. And so I think that's my contribution there. I mean, I can talk about many examples of serendipity, and they usually happen in these really tiny moments where you don't expect. You know, you meet someone that is the key for something that you've been looking for. You know, so the only thing I want to share extra is that if we're always paying attention to these little details that we usually just set apart, we can find all these meaningful serendipitous moments.
Thanks, Samara. Sonia, the floor is yours.
So Amrita is saying the relationship building is really the key, because as a middle class working group, we really do think twice to approach government as a support. I think overall, we really need to think about approaching each other and work on this idea of relationships. And that really is the context of Design Open, to be able to connect from wherever we are, you know, just take the time out. Otherwise, we wouldn't do that. We are all in different places doing different things, but just taking that little bit of time out to make the connections happen. Vish, you have something to add?
No, absolutely. You know, since you brought government and we have, you know, Mr. Jayesh with us, easily among the most foremost, you know, sort of bureaucratic leaders in the country, government leaders. See, from my experience, what I've seen, I've had the privilege and the honor to work with some of the top bureaucrats, both at Government of India as well as in Government of Tamil Nadu. And I actually see that the country has changed, you know, phenomenally in the hands of such, you know, visionary leaders as Mr. Jayesh. And in that lies, you know, an opportunity for all of us, you know, the so-called middle class, I think, can really look at government not just as something that doles out subsidies and schemes. I think we can really meaningfully connect as you know, equal status peer, you know, sort of peers and stakeholders with the government, and work with the government as partners to effect real change. So I just thought I should leave it, you know, leave that note.
And build those relationships that need to be built. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, we'll invite you back for our next Design Open, which is on 22nd September. If you enjoyed this conversation, let's take out another 44 minutes out then. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and enjoy your morning for Brazil, afternoon, evening for India, and late evening from Japan, because I see there are some people from Japan also. And here in Europe, we'll go for lunch, I guess, and some of the folks who are in Europe.
Coffee time.
I would request